Hello, this is Jennifer Duffel presenting my final project, Podcasting and Education. So, what exactly is a podcast? According to Webster's Dictionary, a podcast is a topic-specific program made available in a digital format for automatic download over the internet. Podcasting is known as something as time-shifted media, which means that it can be downloaded at any time by anybody. Podcast is not an actual word, but an acronym. The POD stands for Playable on Demand, and the CAST stands for Broadcast. Okay, so history of podcasting. Podcasting itself is a relatively new phenomenon. In 2004, an MTV DJ, Adam Curry, and his friend Dave Weiner are actually going to sit down and invent the first podcast. That same year, a newspaper is going to coin the term. In 2005 through 6, both Apple and Yahoo are going to release support systems for podcasts that allow you to subscribe to your favorite episode. In 2005 through 7, President George W. Bush is going to be the first president to utilize podcasting to deliver his weekly addresses. In 2006, you're going to see a slight spike in popularity because Steve Jobs is going to demonstrate how to create a podcast as one of his keynote addresses. Fast forward to 2013, there's going to be over 1 billion podcast subscribers via Apple. But in 2014 is when you're going to see the popularity skyrocket due to a true crime series known as Serial. Okay, so right here, I just wanted to show you a chart that demonstrates the percentage of Americans ages 12 and above who listen to podcasts. Starting in 2006, you see that only about 10% of Americans had ever listened to a podcast. This number is going to steadily grow until 2019, where we're at an average of at least 51% of Americans listen to a podcast, and 32% of Americans have listened to a podcast within the last month. Okay, so using podcasts in the classroom. The purpose of a podcast is to deliver content on a regular basis. This is going to give us multiple opportunities for project-based learning. And you can do this via two ways. You can utilize a pre-made podcast that covers the same topics that you're teaching in the classroom, or you can create your own classroom podcast. So at first, let's talk about utilizing a pre-made podcast. So this is fantastic because this is really going to help students with critical thinking and listening comprehension. One of the things that I advise is that when you find the correct podcast, first off, listen to the whole thing. Um, some of these podcast commentators might have colorful language, and that's a real quick way to get in trouble. But listen to it and make out a simple questionnaire, something along the lines that asks students, what is the name of the main character, the setting of the story, the basic plot, and then have them fill it out as they go. That way they stay on task. But then at the end of an episode or a group of episodes, ask them something a little bit more thought provoking. This year in my Arkansas history class, we did something every Friday that we called Freaky Friday. And we would find some kind of lore or scary story that kind of worked with what we were learning in class that week. And on that Friday, we would have our questions, we would listen to the podcast, and at the end, we would start to discuss. And a lot of my students would get really into it because podcasts are great because they tend to pit one character against the other. And they would be like, well, this guy did it. And the other one would be like, no, this one. And so what I would do is have them write an argumentative essay, and they would have to be explain why they thought that, and here's how they, backed it up with this evidence. So it's really fun ways. As a history teacher, some of the ones that I recommend was Stuff You Missed in History Class. 30 for 30. This is actually sports history. My athletes absolutely love it. Lore, this is the one I was talking about that I use for Freaky Friday. It explains how American folklore came to be. Revolutions, and then The Way I Heard It by Micro. Okay, so creating a classroom podcast. First off, This is exciting. This is more the project-based learning because this is going to require your students to, one, to create the topic, to create the whole idea around the show. They're going to have to design and develop the podcast page, give it a theme. They're going to have to come up with the questions and the talking points. They're going to have to commentate. They're going to have to discuss amongst each other. They're going to have to edit and refine, and then they're going to have to publish it. 4 benefits to this is one, confidence, which so many students lack. With a podcast, they get to speak in front of a non-visible audience, and this will give them the opportunity to sharpen their skills as a speaker without fear of embarrassment. 2, reflection and discussion. During the podcast, they're going to have candid discussions over daily topics learned in class. 3, revise and publish. Give students crucial editing skills, which so many lack. And then 4, assessment. Teachers are actually going to have the ability to assess their students on something other than just their writing. We're going to be able to look at them and grade them based on their thoughts and their knowledge, which is extremely exciting to me. One of the lessons that I have actually already started to plan out ever since doing this project is when I get to the Civil War, I thought a great discussion would be, did the South ever have a chance? Kids are going to have to research, they're going to have to come up with questions, talking points, and then they're going to have to back it up. And it's going to be great because you're going to see kids on both sides. And I am so excited for that lesson already. Okay, Bloom's taxonomy. Podcasting focuses on the top layers of Bloom's taxonomy, allowing for creativity and innovation. Like we said, they got to come up with a theme, they got to come up with the topics, they have to create questions, they have to discuss, they have to edit, they have to refine, then they have to publish. And that is going to utilize these top 4 layers right here in Bloom's. So let's discuss pros and cons of podcasting in the classroom. For the cons, you have to have availability to streaming devices. This past year, I taught in a very low socioeconomic area, and several of my students did not have access to computers or Wi-Fi at home. You also have to run into individuals who are hearing impaired, but this isn't so much a problem because there is closed captions or you can get the transcript. There is additional setup and preparation, and there's a startup cost. However, the cost is not that bad. If you're looking for your average, basic, it's just $100 to $200. But if you are wanting to get on the more professional side of things, you're looking for upwards $1,500 to $2,000. As for the pros, it is awesome for outside of the classroom because any kid that misses for any reason, being sick, on a trip, athletics, they can log on to a computer at any time, any place, and stay up to date on classroom lectures, discussions, and notes that they missed. It's an awesome opportunity for parental involvement because this gives the parents the opportunity to see what is going on in the classroom and what their children are learning. It improves critical thinking skills, listening comprehension, and time management, and it brings excitement to the classroom and makes lessons come to life, which is something that I think a lot of times we forget to do. We hand them a textbook and expect them to read it and be excited about the content. Okay, so the first website that I want to review is Podbean. If there's one thing I learned from this project or one thing that I'm most excited about, it's Podbean. Podbean explained how to create a podcast and walked you through step by step on how to do it, and it was so easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is log in, and then it is a free hosting site. Okay, now that I'm logged in, it brings you to your dashboard, and easy enough, you want to publish episode. So you're going to click that. And now one of the things that I really like about Podbean is that it refuses to upload a document unless it is something that you created. If there's any kind of tag to anyone else, It will not let you do it because of copyright issues. So I'm going to choose File. And what you can't see is that I'm clicking my file. So I clicked on that, give it a name. It's going to take a few seconds to download. If you want, you can describe what's going on. You have two options, free or premium. Free is fantastic. Once it's done, you're just going to click publish. And you have a podcast. It gives you the ability to change the theme, change the colors. You can hit play. It's going to show whether or not it's working. And I actually named my site Ramblings of a Junior High Teacher. And there's my podcast. So this is something I will definitely be utilizing in the very near future. Okay, so the second website that I wanted to review is something that we all have and something that we all have accessibility to, and that's iTunes. So iTunes comes free with any iPhone. You can download it for free on any computer. And the reason I wanted to talk about iTunes is because it has a plethora of podcasts. Any podcast you want, you can get on iTunes for free. So let's look at, let's see, let's do The Way I Heard It by Micro. It's one of my favorite podcasts. So you type it in, and there you go. All of the podcast episodes are there. You hit play, check it out to make sure it works. And then if you like what you hear, you're going to slide over to the Get button. You click Get and it downloads to your computer, and you actually have the option to share on Twitter, Facebook, or copy the link. Let's say that's not your style. Let's go to Lore, which is one of my favorites. My kids love it because it's a little bit creepy. And there we go. You have all the Lore episodes. Same thing. Click it, sample it, make sure you like it, go over and get it. And that's the easiest thing and greatest thing about iTunes, because if you don't want to make your own podcast, if you just want to use one that's already made, they're all right here. So, a website that I would like to give a little bit of a shout out to, but I'm not really going to review, is GarageBand. If you're looking to be a little bit more on the professional side of things, GarageBand is another free website, and this is going to be more your sound mixing and changing up the audio. So, this is for those who want to get a little bit more serious. So, here is my reflective paper. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my video. And here is my bibliography. Thank you again and have a great day.